As you know, the European treaty is fairly clear about energy. It says there is a European energy, but in the end, the choices for the energy mix, whether you have nuclear or renewables, what degree, that is left to the member states. Now, that is a deliberate choice, and member states just consider energy to be sufficiently important that they don't want to give it under the control of Brussels, as you would say. The objectives of these strategies are essentially the same: to move to a more efficient and a more low-carbon, yet still secure energy supply and demand system. So the long-term objective is the same, but given the differences in economic structure, differences in geography, differences in fuel mix, differences of national preferences. Just mentioned, in Germany the population doesn't like nuclear, in France it likes nuclear. So all these differences of course mean that there are different roads be used, and that means also there will be different policies, instruments and tools be applied. And within this big transition period, which might last probably a few decades, of course the EU level through the European Commission should make tries to ensure that actually all these different national strategies don't bring the European market or the European energy policy, including the external dimension, to a break. Yeah, if you want to look at Europe working together, there are two dimensions to that. One is the internal cooperation, and one is the external cooperation, or how the EU is seen in other countries outside the EU as a unity or as a unit. Now, let me just start with the internal part. What we have seen because of these national energy choices, national energy transitions, which all look very, very different in the different countries. Take the example of Germany, take the example of France, then also you have the example of Italy, and they're all very different besides pursuing the same objectives. Now, these national energy choices, national energy transitions now require a far bigger degree of cooperation between the member states, far bigger degree of integration of the internal market, a far bigger degree of joint infrastructure, common infrastructure. So these are big issues where the EU member states, including the energy companies, have not been very keen and very good at. So we're talking really about a new step of integration, and that by itself will of course take some time. Now, assuming that at some stage this integration is happening, then of course the EU by definition would already be looked at from the outside as a much more unified, harmonious entity. And that of course would then be the starting point to structure the discussions outside the EU. Now, unless this happens, I think there is little hope and there is little reason to believe that the EU will present itself to the outside world as a more a coordinated bloc, because the interests are very, very different. And interests relate partly to geography, where are your suppliers from? It's a very big difference whether you are Finland or whether you are Italy or Spain or Poland. So geography will matter a lot and still does. Another point that matters very much is history. There has been historically a lot of good relationships between Germany, Russia, Italy, Russia, while between Poland and Russia the situation is different. And you could also see there has been a lot of relationship of different nature between southern European countries and North Africa. And I could go on and go on with this. And then also it depends very much what kind of market you're talking about. Again, here are differences between the continental market, which is relatively well interconnected, or at least starts to be, while there are peripheral markets that will always have very, very different interest.